But we're going to try again here. But first, let me tell you a little bit about him, because I'm convinced that he's just on-time, prompt kind of guy, and I told him 9:30. So we'll give him another minute or two here. But Robert M. Stanley, as I said, has been a guest on this show several times in the past. Formerly a corporate journalist for Honda Research and Development in Torrance, California. Robert Stanley is currently the author of Close Encounters on Capitol Hill and Covert Encounters in Washington, D.C. And he is the host of Unicus Radio Hour, and he has served as a correspondent for America's Morning News and America's Radio News Network. In 2001, he became the webmaster of unicusmagazine.com, and in 2013, he became the owner-operator of the Unicus Radio Network. Mr. Stanley has traveled to more than 50 countries and has read hundreds of books and thousands of articles during his lifelong pursuit of modern and ancient mysteries. Over the past 30 years, Robert's quest for unique ideas and information has led him to research and write about many controversial topics. His ongoing investigations have been featured on television, radio, and in print. He is a native of Los Angeles, California. He grew up in Malibu, and in 2008 moved to southern New England, where he now lives with his wife, son, and his dog. And I think that's about all you need to know. So why don't we get him on, and, well, let's try. I try not to do it live like this, but sometimes I have no choice. So we'll see what happens. We're ringing, folks.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Robert. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I am doing fine, thank you. I just read off your bio. Tried to pull you in on the break, but we had to do it live. So, no, that's quite all right. It happens. It's live radio. What are you going to do? But, hey, thank you so much for coming on tonight. And I do want to apologize for the issues we had last time and had to reschedule. I think this has happened a couple times now. I do apologize.
Don't worry about it. It's fine.
So, Robert, I read off the bio, but for any new listeners, maybe you want to give a little scoop, a little more scoop on your background, and tell me what's new with you since the last time we spoke.
Besides troubleshooting technical difficulties here in the studio, I've been hosting my radio show 5 nights a week, and it's keeping me busy. I'm also writing a third book now. It's called Archons and Angels, sort of like the good, the bad, the ugly, cosmic conspiracies and things of that nature. I am still working as a part-time as a correspondent for America's Radio News Network, and in fact I filed a report today, which was, it's national radio out of Washington, D.C. I still can't quite believe they're letting me do this, but apparently they're thrilled to have me talking about this stuff, which it doesn't quite seem real to me, but it's, hey, I've got the tapes to prove it. So anyway, that's what I've been doing.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm looking forward to the new book. You really do a good job on your books. You put a lot of information, and you can tell that you spend a lot of time putting this together.
Yeah, it does. It takes a tremendous amount of focus and time to get the information, so that it flows. It's just like, you never see that. When you're reading a book, you have no idea how long it took somebody to actually do that. Sort of like watching a movie,
Right. And, until I started doing this show almost 6 years ago now, I didn't realize how much work actually went into a book till I started having different guests on, and then I've been in the process of writing my own about some experiences that I've had, and I'll tell you, it is time consuming, and it's not as easy as some people may think.
No, absolutely not. In fact, writing is actually it's the most important thing about it is rewriting, going back again and again over the same material until your head feels like it's going to just explode. And one of the weird parts I find is the brain is especially when it comes to editing material, is that your brain will either add or omit things that may or may not be there. It's just really strange. So that kind of is a challenge mentally. And that's why a lot of times it's good to have more than one person looking at your work before you publish it, or even these days, with publishing on demand, it's really quite different. It's pretty simple, and I've done this, where you get a manuscript out there, and then you read through it as a copy in your hands, as opposed to on a computer screen, where you're just sitting there very casually, having a cup of coffee, looking out the window, whatever, reading a book, your book, and then finding a typo or a word or something, and you go, wait a minute, how did I miss that? I looked at that thing like 10 times before I published it. So anyway, you mark up the book with your red ink, go back in there, make the changes, and then upload the file. I happen to be using CreateSpace, which is a division of Amazon, and I like them very much. I highly recommend them to independent authors, because they actually are also your distribution channel, and that can go internationally and certainly nationally, depending on how many levels you want them to distribute your work. And it's amazing to me how these days everything has changed. We can broadcast shows. You can do desktop publishing. I mean, pretty much anything you can think of, you can do in a computer now.
Oh, I know. It is absolutely amazing. I mean, you think about once the internet started blossoming, all the different radio shows that have come about, and all the different works, period, that have come about. I mean, you could do everything. I mean, people don't need photo mats no more. They don't. I mean, it's just all right there. Everything you want. As a matter of fact, I mean, you could get, really, if you want, any channel that's out there. You could get on the internet. Yeah. These days it is, and so anyway, that's kind of what I've been working on. And my son's actually going to college next week, which is a big deal around his house. I was telling my wife today, it's like I remember it wasn't that long ago. Our son was having separation anxiety going to preschool. Now, the parents are having a separation anxiety as he's entering college, leaving the house. And unless somebody is a parent or they've gone through it yet, I know when my daughter got to that age and decided she was going to college and moving away, it was I mean, you're proud of them. You're glad that they're doing the right thing, but at the same time, there's a part of you inside that just folds. It's like, oh my God, my baby's leaving. It's like, wow.
I felt it as soon as he graduated. I was already sensing it, and it made me sad. I'm one of those stay-at-home dads at a time when it was really not very popular. It is now, but let's see, what year was that? Well, anyway, it was, I'm going to say early 90s. Yeah. I'm going to say or maybe, let's see, wait a minute, no, late 90s, sorry. Because he's 18 now. So I started taking care of him when he was 3. My wife wanted to go back to work full time, and we didn't feel really comfortable about leaving him at with a daycare or a sitter full time. So I worked part time, and then I stayed home and I took care of him, and it was really neat, actually. But I got to tell you, it's a lot of work too. I mean, people, I think, do not respect, or they totally underestimate the mother's role at staying home, not just taking care of the kid, but also running a household. It can get it's a lot of responsibility. Actually, it's not a picnic.
Yeah, let's just say that going back to work is like a night out with the boys after you've done that.
Man. Yeah. After our son was first born, and I was getting little or no sleep at the house, and everything was kind of just crazy at the house. Yeah, actually going to work did seem like a vacation. on some level. But I think what part of it too is I wasn't very close with my dad, so I think when the opportunity presented itself, I thought, okay, yeah, why not spend more time, especially because I also knew that, and believe me, I experienced this with my son, that when he became a teenager, that he was going to start rebelling, and whatever crises he was going to have, it would be really tough to deal with it if I hadn't established a solid relationship early on. In other words, bonding with your kids when they're young is, I think, probably the best antidote for when they become angry, confused teenagers, zombies, where they stay up all night.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And I've always had an open, honest relationship with my kids, and I'm
Good.
glad, because I'll tell you, they could get, once they get older, they know it all. You can't tell them anything, and you have to let them make some mistakes. I mean, they've got to learn.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
And of course, they'll always tell you, I'm an adult now. You can't tell me what to do. I've heard that. It's like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But Robert, now that we've spoke about our children and all that stuff, now we got to think about maybe their future and look at everything that's going on, not just in this country, but around the world, especially around the world right now. What do you see coming? I mean, the United States is talking about nailing Syria now, and I keep saying if that happens, I see World War III coming, and that's a scary thing.
Of course it is. So, I mean, somebody today was, gosh, I've done so much today, it's kind of weird. This is my third show today. So somebody along, triple header. Somebody told me that the president said we weren't going to go in, that they were going to let the UN handle it. We'll see. Honestly, I don't know. I don't trust any of the politicians, and what I really don't like is the way that they lecture us while they're lying to us about things. I can't say for sure what's going to happen, but I did interview somebody today I thought was fascinating. In England, he claims to be a psychic surgeon that can read the Akashic records, and he was talking about these different extraterrestrial races and how they've influenced us, both good and ill, which fits perfectly in with what I've been writing about in this. And I only write nonfiction. In fact, 99% of what I read is nonfiction, because the truth is stranger than fiction. Honestly, it just is. Especially the path that I'm treading on. The truth is just so far beyond anything that Hollywood could come up with. It's not even funny. But actually, one of the things that I was noticing is these portals. I sort of fell into that as well. That the wormholes actually play a very large role, whatever you call them, portals, wormholes, stargates. Certainly, that's what's been going on in Washington, D.C. for a long time. That they don't have to have a base there; they can literally just pop in and out of these portals whenever they feel like it. And based on what my journalism partner in Washington, D.C. is Wilbur Allen. And he's actually helped with the reason I got started investigating this 8 years ago. But he lives 7 blocks from the White House. And almost every night, if it's not raining, he's putting out his top-of-the-line Nikon equipment on top of the roof where he lives and taking, it's automated, so it's taking one shot every 2 seconds. And he's getting UFOs on a regular basis. I mean, like every night for months now. He's been doing this, and I think it proves conclusively that they're UFOs, whatever you want to call them, starships, interdimensional craft. They're severely interested in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I had Wilbur Allen on. Might have been a couple months ago now, and he's a fascinating guy. Really enjoyed talking with him. Yeah, and he had great things to say about you as well. So, and I was going to ask you about this UFO influence, this alien influence.
Yeah, it's both good and bad, okay? Some of them would be considered angels, others would be considered demons, hence the name of the book, Archons and Angels. Archons would be considered, it's just another word for demons, or the negatives, the fallen angels. And they've been around for quite some time. Now, it's really hard. It's almost like trying to nail Jello to a wall when it comes to this, because the level of disinformation and utter confusion around these issues is extremely high. I mean, it's just it comes with the territory. So sorting it out, I'm not sure how much of this is credible or accurate, but clearly there's a demonic influence in Washington, D.C., the Vatican. The banking system, is utterly corrupt, and that has actually become worse. It has become worse, but from what I was told today by this guy, what's his name is Chris Thomas, was telling me that what we perceive as a reptilian influence that has no respect for free will or the rights of others, that is actually being phased out. Wow. That they actually came from, according to him, his view. That they came from a completely different universe to this one in order to feed off of the energies here, and in the process violate people's free will. Because what he said, the huge difference is that this universe was originally or is based on the template of respect for others' free will.
Right.
It's the law of one. According to some people, it's the first law. And so, so some people say do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But, it's just one of the principal fundamental things about this universe is free will. Now, the other universe that he's talking about, it's the complete opposite. So they're very parasitic, I guess is the way we would talk about it. And they made their way over here at some point, somehow, and started to basically tear this place apart, just simply by feeding off the energy and negatively influencing people to do things that are a violation of free will. And so, but he seems to think, and I tend to believe him, that this influence has been eradicated, and it is definitely on its way out. It's phasing out. There is another group, though, that he was very adamant and very clear about. He calls them the VLAN, and he says that these are a group of individuals that are what he calls semi-physical. He said, what really we are as physical beings, the way we understand it here in this dimension of physicality is unique. That the majority of life in this universe is what we would consider semi-physical or non-physical, but still completely intelligent, intact beings. So, and we would, like I said, there's a host of names, but typically we would think of them as angels.
Right.
Okay. They don't have to have wings. I'm just saying they're not physical. Sometimes we can see them when we raise our vibration or our consciousness, because we do have a non-physical component too, right? It's the soul. That's
right. We do.
So, right?
Yeah. No.
Right. So anyway, he says, and sometimes they will lower their vibration temporarily to interface with us for various reasons. But he said there's one group, highly manipulative, and that they want us off this world. And that's why he said the channeled messages of ascension and all these ascended masters and all this stuff, he said it's extremely misleading, and there's an agenda there by this group, the VLAN, as he calls them. They want us off this world because he said this world particularly is sort of the key to the evolution of this universe. It's highly unique.
I was just going to ask why, with all the planets that are out there, and I'm sure all the planets that have to be similar to Earth, why pick this one that's occupied?
Yeah, we don't know how similar they are. And here's the thing he was explaining to me is that you got to understand, there has been, he said, and I believe this is true, if you look back into the record historically, there have been more species that have risen, manifest on this world than there has species throughout the entire universe. Now, most of them are extinct here now, but think about it, as many extinctions as we've had, and still look at the diversity. There's something about this world. It stands out as not just a garden. There's something more to it. And he said it actually had been protected on some level from those from outside the universe, what he called the 14th faction, or yes, I believe he called it something like that. Anyway, these truly alien, not of this universe, those beings are they caused wreaked a lot of havoc, and so there was some sort of shield that was put up to prevent them from coming here directly over a period of time. I do believe at some point they did arrive here, and that was discovered, or at least it was noticed by a guy named Wilhelm Reich. Are you familiar with him?
Sounds familiar, but not right offhand. No, I think I've heard of him.
Okay, some people maybe the word cloudbusters or Oregon energy.
Yeah, that rings a bell.
Okay, so that was him. He noticed that there were entities here that were literally sucking the life out of the planet, and so he started doing things to mitigate that, and ultimately the FDA. A lot of people really didn't like him. They either didn't believe him or they felt threatened by what he was doing. Because once he figured out what the problem was, he started finding ways to solve it, not only in the environment but within the human body. And so he was thrown in jail. That's where he died. And it was, tragic, another tragic loss. But yeah. So anyway, I'm just saying that there's a lot more to the history of this planet than most people have ever considered, and the portals do play a huge role in it. They're not just like a few of them. There's a lot of them all over the planet. If you haven't read the book The Hunt for Skinwalker, I highly recommend you take a look at that too, because that was in Utah, or is in Utah, I should say. We don't know how old that portal is, but it's probably ancient, like all the other ones are ancient. And who knows where these things go to. I'm sure there's more than one place that these portals connect to, or time possibly that they connect to. But so go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I wonder, I've been hearing about this cave somewhere, I believe it's in the Middle East, and that soldiers keep going in to check out some kind of device that's in there, or craft, and they never come back out.
Well, I guess I didn't send you the article I wrote, but it's just an excerpt from one of the chapters in my book. But a friend of mine, I was talking to him one day, and he's retired Navy, and he told me what happened to him July 4th, 1975, when he was testing an F-14 that was going to be introduced into, that particular jet was going to be introduced into the fleet, and they were doing these special tests across the Pacific. Really high speed, long distance testing. And at one point, on one leg of one journey, where he flew out of Hawaii, he flew south across the equator, down near Starbuck Island, which is near Howland Island, where allegedly Amelia Earhart went missing. Or at least her last radio transmission was supposedly in that area. But anyway, he was down there. He got orders to turn west at that point. Mm-hmm. And so he was flying kind of just south of the equator, but along the equator, right? And like 30,000 feet, going pretty darn fast. Whatever, Mach 1 point something. And he said there was a green fog and that he entered and lost both engines and his radio. So he had to make he started planning he thought he was going to have to ditch into the ocean. So he was circling to lose some speed, and he said as he got below the cloud cover, he noticed there was an island down there. Conveniently, there was an island down there, with a volcano on it, and he says it wasn't on any map that he was aware of. And so he ended up making an emergency landing there in the lagoon, and actually skidding across the lagoon right up onto a beach. He said it was a huge beach, and that there was people living there that were Polynesian, but they spoke English with a French accent, and there was nothing normal about this place. Everything about it was I mean, on one level he was lucky, but it altered him, you know. I mean, he was there for 6 months. He couldn't get a radio signal out. The emergency transponder and radio that he had, standard issue, it wouldn't work. He said when he tried to send a signal, it would just ping back, which he said it made no sense. Like most of the things on the island, it absolutely made no sense whatsoever.
So where did they get this portal technology from? And you say that there's plenty of these things. So this could be some of these spirals that people see in the sky. This is what that could be then. They're opening portals?
Yeah, some of them are artificial. Some of them are either natural or so ancient that they just appear to be part of the environment. They're, you know, I mean, okay, as I'm writing all this information earlier at I think January of this year, I'm writing it all down. And then I find out that one of my other friends had actually gone through a portal, or so he says, in Peru, at that doorway. You know, it looks like it's a big stone. There's like a faux doorway there. So it's I forget the name of it, but it's near Lake Titicaca on the shoreline out there. Anyway, some people call it the Gateway of the Gods, and it's got a long history of strange things, people coming and going through it, even though it looks like just, you know, it looks like just a big stone with a fake door carved into it. But you have to know how to open it. So anyway, I mean, what are the odds that I would know two people that are close friends of mine that have actually, you know, or I should say allegedly gone through portals like that and come back? Because that's the other thing. That's the only thing where it gets really weird is there's a lot of people that have gone missing in modern history that have never returned, and they're without a trace. And so a lot of times they're in a ship or a plane or something as mundane as just walking through a field, and literally in front of people they just vanish. One
of the listeners asked how he got off the island. That he became
good question.
On.
Yeah, I'm sorry I wasn't sure how much information you guys want on this, but he was there for 6 months. Believe me, he was trying to get off the island. He was lighting signal fires and whatnot. But anyway, after about 6 months, the elders noticed that he was very depressed, and so they said, "It's time for you to go." And he said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, it's time for you to get off the island." And he says, "Man, I told you that from day one that I needed to go get back to my unit." So anyway, he said goodbye. They put him in their canoes. Of course, he brought his raft with him, his standard issue Navy raft, and his gear. And so when they got out past the reef at a certain point, he got into his raft, and they said goodbye, and they promised him. They said, "You're going to be fine. You're going to your radio's going to work here shortly. Don't worry, you're going to get picked up." So he's thinking. He didn't believe him. He thought, "Oh, they're just getting they're getting rid of me. I'm dead. I'm going to die out here," because he never saw any ships come by or airplanes come overhead while he was there in the 6 months. And so anyway, he says he's watching them paddle back, and he says after they got past to a certain point, there was a slight green mist over the island, and then the whole thing vanished in a flash of white light. He said there was no noise, but there was kind of like a breeze, a gentle, like as it happened. But he said, he said that completely baffled him. He had no idea how anything like that could. I mean, how do you make an island disappear? Right?
Yeah, it's a good
question. The thing is, he'd gone back out through the portal. He didn't realize it. At that point, he drifted back. And the natives knew this. They knew how to get here. They just didn't want to come away here. Because the thing is, they didn't need money. They didn't need electricity. They had everything they needed. All they had to do really was take care of each other, live together as like extended family, and everything was good. It was all good. It was like, you know, literally like a paradise.
You know, and so, then you anyway, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so here's what happened. The radio did work. After the island disappeared, he started cranking up the radio, you know, because at this point, like now he's really in the middle of nowhere. He's screwed. If that radio doesn't work, he figures, well, I'm done. I'm dead. And so he got a signal out, An AWAC picked it up. They vectored a commercial fishing vessel to him, which then took him into rendezvous with a naval vessel that took him back to Hawaii, where for 3 weeks he was debriefed by a team of civilians. And God, it's so ironic. I mean, I can't make this stuff up, honestly, even if I tried. as I'm transcribing this information, right, and I'm getting feedback from my other friend who says he's been through a portal, I noticed in the news from the Associated Press out of Hawaii, there was a Coast Guardsman that went missing off Oahu. Okay, his car was there at a remote beach, but he was nowhere to be found. They searched for 3 weeks. They couldn't find any sign of him. Okay, land, sea, and air. They looked everywhere for this guy. 3 months later, he shows up. Don't ask me how, because I haven't gotten the details from this. Maybe I never will, but anyway, the point is, 3 months later, he shows up, and they said, in the story, they said he was incoherent, so they took him to the hospital. And so what was the first thing he did? He called his base commander. And then they transferred him. Can you imagine where they might have transferred him to? Pearl Harbor. It's exactly where my friend had been taken for 3 weeks.
Wow.
I mean, they transferred him to the medical facility at Pearl Harbor for a debriefing. So now at this point, I'm thinking, okay, this is crazy. The synchronicity, whatever you want to call it, is just off the chart. And now I'm wondering how many people have gone through these portals and come back and nobody believed them, or that there's a government agency that absolutely does believe them because they're monitoring this activity, but they won't divulge it to the public for whatever reason.
I see. And you know, I guess one of my questions would be is how far down the ladder does this go? I mean, is the president aware of this type of stuff? Because we know it's way above his head.
Yeah, I don't know what he's aware of, honestly. I mean, look, he's just paid to give speeches most of the time and sign papers and smile for the camera. It's not like he's in charge of much of anything, in my opinion.
Right, I agree with you. You know, and somebody had mentioned that it sounds like a TV show, Lost, that used to
Yes,
come
I
out.
know.
And you got to wonder if that's why these shows come out. You know?
Or Fringe. Fringe was another one. You know, yes, of course, there's a lot of people in Hollywood that take this stuff and fictionalize it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's done intentionally too, because so if somebody comes forward, like, look, my friend was not planning on telling anybody about what happened to him. Even when he came back, when he was being debriefed, he did not tell them everything because he didn't want to be discharged from the Navy for being crazy. At least he thought that's what they would think, right?
Right.
And he was also concerned that if they did find a way back to the island, that they would just wreck the place.
Exactly. You know, and it sounds almost like the Philadelphia experiment on a much bigger level. You know, they made
something like that.
Yeah. So, you know, maybe
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot more details I'm not giving you right now because it's just, I mean, what's the point? The thing is, though, I think we need to discuss it in general terms, and so people have some orientation, because here's the bottom line, what I've come to the conclusion this year, in the last 8 months of research on this, and it feels like a lifetime already, but we're not supposed to go through those portals.
Oh, I bet we're not.
No, well, I mean, it sounds very intriguing, okay, but it's also very dangerous, and it's not why we're here. We are not here to ascend or to transit some wormhole to another world just because, you know, we fouled our own nest. We had help doing this, okay? We were actually pushed in this direction to screw things up here so that we'd want to leave so that others could take our place here, because this is such a critical planet within the greater scheme of things as far as the evolution of this universe.
So then basically this stuff is presented to us to try to take us maybe off our real purpose here, which I would think that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And, you know, That's the way I look at
It's
it.
true.
So, but yeah, these
It's true, but not to diminish it at all. Honestly, this is a privilege. I know it's a pain in the ass too, but it's unique. This level of density that we're at, or this dimension, is truly unique, and the experiences that we have here cannot be had other places. I mean, you think about it. In a lifetime, what do you take with you? Nothing other than your memories.
You come into this world with nothing, and you leave this world with nothing.
Yeah. Well, except your memories. And see, the thing is that as a child, we still have some memories. Even though there's a veil, we still have some memories. Of course, that's quickly dismissed, right?
Right.
Because children don't know anything, right? They're fresh off the farm. They don't know anything, allegedly, which it's not true. But I'm just saying that's the way our society treats it that way. In the past, it wasn't like that. It really wasn't. But it is now. And again, like I said, this was all orchestrated by various manipulative extraterrestrials within this universe, and some obviously that were outside of the universe that found their way in. So it's a bit of a mess, and I do feel like people don't have the proper context. Things are not in the proper context, so therefore most of us are highly disoriented and easily manipulated.
That's right. Oh, and we're seeing a lot of that. I mean, obviously,
A lot.
People are in another world. And I was just talking about the medications, the pill epidemic that we have in this country right now. I mean, they talk about, street drugs. They had to look at these pharmaceuticals because that's where the problem's at. I mean, people are just getting dumbed down. They're feeding these things to kids. It's like, what? You have emotions? No, we've got pills for that. I mean, then they're getting their military training with their video games, and it's
Right.
on. So they're building their little their mind controlled soldiers, and it's really sad to see.
Yeah, but it's this is all temporary, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, we're eternal beings on some level, not physically. And that's the difference between us and those beings that are semi-physical and non-physical. They don't have a soul in a body. They're just a soul. There's the difference. Like you were saying before about actually, it was maybe somebody else. I'm sorry, my brain is kind of scattered. I do think, though, that we are having, like you said, a human experience, right? We're souls having a human experience. That's the way you put it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was brought up to me recently was that our souls are not fully present here now, and that again is done by design. So soul reintegration is something that the current powers that be, really the VLONs, they don't want that to happen, because it's going to make it impossible for them to push us off or to fall for their crap any longer.
Right.
So one of the things that was the way it was described to me is it was supposed to happen in 2012, but of course all the fear mongering that went along with it, especially in the Western world, people were so distracted they didn't realize that this was an opportunity for a new way of life, the next level of life. In other words, I would have to say, in summary, that we're on an interrupted journey, or our evolutionary path has been interrupted by these manipulative entities for their own agenda.
Yeah, exactly, and it has. And we're just talking about having memories. When we leave the world, we take our memories with us. And when we're babies, we probably, like you said, we have those memories, and maybe it's a protective mechanism that when we start becoming, conscious, that we don't remember our past lives if we had them, because how complicating would that get?
Well, it's also like, if you're going to write the next chapter of your life, you do it on a blank piece of paper.
Yeah.
Obviously. But that doesn't mean that the other chapters have no value, that they just, you don't burn the other chapters. I mean, trash them. there's a connection there, but it's like I said, I don't think we were supposed to forget. I still feel like that was put upon us, this level of sort of imposed amnesia. The soul never forgets anything. And, what you're talking about, okay, things have gotten a lot worse as far as the way that we are disconnected from each other and from the cosmos, which is totally conscious. I mean, the universe is, and it was created for us by an intelligent living energy, okay? So that means everything is animated or has a spirit to it or a level of consciousness. But that's not how we see things now. I mean, we are so utterly distracted by, supposed benefits of modern technology, which obviously we're using right now to speak to each other. But, people were highly connected. I think if not as much as now, maybe even more so, before we had all this stuff.
Oh, you're right. They've used first it was the TV, and that served its purpose, and actually it still does, because now they just give people more channels. Then the internet come along, and I mean, that's really disconnected people. I mean, in a sense, I mean, yeah, you and I use it as a weapon against the New World Order to get the truth out. But a lot of people, I mean, what happened to the days when someone called and said, "Hey, happy birthday"? Now you got to go to your Facebook page to see that stuff. I mean, there's no more interaction. So, they put these tools out there to separate and divide. And some of us use them to our advantage. But a good deal of us have no idea that we're being manipulated.
Right.
We got a break here. Robert Stanley, and we've got him linked up on the main page of LateNightInTheMidlands.com. So you can go click on his links there. We've got his bio up as well. His books, Close Encounters on Capitol Hill and Covert Encounters in Washington, D.C. He also has his own radio show, the Unicus Radio Hour. And tell us a little bit about the show, Robert.
Yeah, it's fascinating for me anyway. I mean, especially now, I've been doing 5 nights a week. Just started doing that, so it's Monday through Friday from 8 till 10 Eastern. But we explore all kinds of topics. It's an open forum. I call it we're a cyber tribe, in the Matrix, trying to steer clear of all the manipulation and control, and find ways that we can share information and ideas with one another using this technology that basically was designed to enslave us. So that's basically what we've been doing. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but I'm enjoying it considerably.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that. So I know it's not just me, because I do 5 nights a week too, and it does become a lot of work. I mean, it takes a lot of your time. Unfortunately, we don't have a crew running around us doing everything for us. So. Right. So yeah, it's time consuming, but it's worth it. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. I love doing this. It's funny. I was a shy person before I started this radio show, and then I just got so sick of having to rely on the fake news or other controlled medias, and I says, well, I'll just do my own. So here I am.
Sure.
Yeah. So the books, tell everybody where they can get them. We have you linked up, but there might be some people who aren't at the website right now.
Yeah, you can. I mean, these books are available on Amazon.com or at my website, unicusmagazine.com, or Borders. They're pretty much distributed everywhere. And you can get them as for Kindle. I do have that as an electronic ebook, I guess you call them. But yeah, it's like I said, there's some levels of this technology I really enjoy as far as getting information out. I'm not really big in social media, but I did for my radio show. I ended up doing a Facebook page just for the show, So I don't post a lot of information on there, but just enough for, let's say, this week's guests, and I just post it there as opposed to on my actual website, because it gets pretty busy. One of the things because I actually created my own radio station mainly so that I would have a place to broadcast my show, but in order to get that to happen, it literally took me months of steep learning curve. Okay, is because what it is, it's a lot of different software that has to be coordinated in order to get a radio station up. And once it's up and running, it's not that big a deal until technical problems. Like I have just had a nightmare with audio interface. The driver for this stupid interface it's just been nothing but trouble. Because I had one, okay, and just one little piece of it went bad, okay, which was the headphones. I needed to have the headphones work so I can monitor the show. And so I ended up replacing it, and then when I uploaded the driver, the software for the hardware, it didn't want to work properly, okay? So now I have to get another one. I mean, I'm kind of just winging it right now. I've patched it together as best I can, but I'm just saying, it's like in the middle of that, one of my monitors went bad, so I had to replace that. And generally speaking, the technology, when it's running well, it's pretty smooth. It's pretty simple. And I enjoy having conversations with people like yourself from all over the world. Actually, that's the other cool thing about now. Radio like this is heard all over the world, and it's archived, which is great because not a lot of people have time to listen live.
That's right.
So they listen at their leisure. And personally, I don't have a lot of commercials. That's by design. I hate commercials. When I'm listening to, most radio stations, and that includes music stations, at least a third of the time is commercials.
Oh, I know. I hate to bring up any names, but, there's a certain nighttime radio show that comes on and is on for 4 hours, and it's become like an infomercial. It's just constant commercial after commercial. Me, we've done shows where we've done very limited commercials. We do have to take a break within 3 hours at some point, but but then we had people complaining, saying, asking us to take more breaks so they wouldn't miss anything because they want to take bathroom breaks too. So, it works out. We try not to overload it. Most of what I do is, that I do run is stuff that, I've read or stuff that products that I've used that I think would help people. And that's it. I mean, I don't get paid per se to do it. I make a little on each sale, that kind of thing. So, I wouldn't want to be commercialized. I like being able to run my own deal here, and the technical problems. Oh, you're not kidding. I had one setting switch on me because I used a different mic the other day to do a video, and it switched a setting I had no idea even existed, never thought of it. And because that setting was switched, it screwed everything up. And I finally, after about, 10 hours of digging, when I was ready to give up, finally, I accidentally hit the wrong logo on my computer, and of course it brings up exactly what I needed to fix. I said, I'll be damned. I'll tell you, one little thing's off, and it's all destroyed.
It can be, it's sort of like flying an airplane. There's so many different controls that need to be coordinated, both hardware and software. Mainly the software, I think, is the harder part of it. But it's ridiculous when I sit here and I look at how much equipment that I'm actually using for the various things that I'm doing with my computers, and I have two of them, both Mac and PC, for photography, for music, for desktop publishing, for broadcasting. I guess it's fairly compact, but still, this studio is extremely full, and that's not even the software is the main thing, right? Obviously, and it's especially the way I'm doing it. I think is pretty straightforward, and yet to get the signal out, the the software I'm using to broadcast has to go through something else. It goes to something else, and eventually it comes out on right through the computer. But even then, the person they have to have some sort of media player, and I've got a lot of different options on my website. So it's kind of cool because people will tell me that they can listen on a smartphone or a tablet as well as a computer. Someday it would be kind of nice. Do you have any affiliates?
No, not really. Not offhand, I don't. No. I did used to have broadcast on 1230 OIC here in was it 1230 something like that here in Columbia.
Yeah.
We've talked with some others about affiliating and them running our shows, but it's always on their terms, and I got to stick to my schedule. So it's So it's not gone yet. It's not worked out yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a limited market. It's if you do that, I think the only upside to it is that you can actually make some money off commercials, but you can also get into a lot of trouble with these people because if you say something like curse words on the air, then they'll drop you because they're getting fined. I mean, there's all these rules and regulations. It gets a little bit ridiculous.
Well, at that point, I think you'd need a delay button. And when I was on the local radio station here, the first night I started doing my show out of that studio, I asked him, I said, well, where's the delay button? He says, oh, in this studio, you don't have one. I said, well, what do I do if somebody calls in and says the wrong thing? Just maybe not take calls. I'm like, what are you, crazy? I'm taking calls.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody says the wrong thing, that's on you. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, and the fines aren't cheap either. They're not cheap, and it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, at this point, I'm sure we could say pretty much whatever you want on the internet, but I don't want to find out, honestly, these days with the way the government spies on everybody. It's probably not even about curse words anymore. It's about keywords that they're looking for, whether you're on the radio or just on Skype or email or anything. They're monitoring everybody all the time. I mean, every possible electronic medium is monitored, as far as I know.
Right, and and we could use bad language if we wanted to, but I try to keep it as clean as I can, just because that's the way I think it should be done. I want the message to go out to everybody. And if you got mom and dad sitting on the couch and they want to listen to the show and their kids happen to be around, well, then they're not going to be so apt to play that show with them around if they're decent parents, that is. So I try to keep it clean.
Well, there are times that I guess it's appropriate. Like I was talking to, I had Mr. Allen on the show. We were talking about what's going on in Washington, D.C., and I just started, my blood pressure went up and I started cursing. And I coined a new phrase, which is NSA holes, and it kind of progressed from there. But when I went into post-production with the file, I actually bleeped out most of the curse words because I didn't feel comfortable with it. I don't think that's appropriate. It's not really serving much of a purpose. And I know some people really they like, and not only fear-mongering, but they like that level of angst or agitation.
Yeah.
They say more stimulating talk radio. I think it's more irritation than anything, and I think people kind of get used to it. That's what they're looking for. They want somebody to go postal on the air.
Yeah, and that's just not my style. Don't get me wrong. I have my moments, but I don't.
Yeah.
I've had guests on before. I won't mention his name, Mr. Webb. Who you'll tell before the show, please do not use the F-bomb. You could use some other words, but keep and what's the first thing the guy does when he comes on is F, 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 F. It's like, really? I mean, come on. Are you really, you don't know that you're swearing like that? I mean, I got a mouth like a sailor sometimes when I'm not on the air, but, I don't slip. I don't make those mistakes, so I just have a hard time believing people when they say, "Oh, I didn't realize I was saying it." Yeah, you did.
Hey, if it was helping at all, I would say go for it. And I'm not just even talking about swearing, though. I mean, there's people, I don't name certain hosts, but I mean, I notice a lot of them are doing it, whether they notice or not. It's sort of like listening to a hemorrhoid get larger. They are constantly irritated and, what do they call that? They're provoking, in a way that they're just whining and I know we talk about problems and stuff, but I mean, honestly, I'm pretty optimistic. I don't want to hear people talking about how screwed up everything is all the time. In other words, especially partisan politics. I mean, I'm just not into that at all. I don't think that's just a dead end street in my opinion, but it's popular mainly because I think what it does is it gives people a way of venting their frustration. On a straw man, essentially.
Right. And, and when I first started this show, I had no intentions of getting into politics at all. But it is a part of the show sometimes, especially in the beginning. I'll go over news and, it's hard to overlook some of the stuff that's going on. But I choose no side. Both parties are just, they're the same. Democrats, Republicans, it's the same team. It's headlocks in front of the cameras and handshakes and shady deals behind closed doors. And, I know that. And presidents, I really feel like they're being selected because if people are really voting this stuff in, then they get what they deserve.
Well, look, a lot of it's pretty beyond. Most of what goes on in Washington, D.C. has nothing to do with us. Per se. I mean, it's like, the average American is not voting directly for these bills. It's the representatives who really don't represent us at all. I mean, based on their actions, and especially this thing with Syria, what's going on, I think it's pretty telling that whoever is running this administration doesn't give a rip about our representatives, so-called, in Congress.
No, it's literally a demonic New World Order agenda going forward. And, I've heard about the alien intervention quite a bit, and I've had people tell me there's good and bad ones. If that's the case, I wish them good ones would start getting busy because, I don't know how we fight something that's off planet. Us, me and you, obviously the government's in cahoots with them. So.
Oh yeah, no, I understand, but see, here's the other thing: the good guys do not want any publicity for a different reason. The bad guys obviously can't come out of the shadows, right? And the good guys, I believe that they are doing a lot behind the scenes, but they don't want any publicity either, because I think it would make their operations even that much more difficult. So the whole thing is covert. I've said this for years, that that's the main reason that they don't come out and just do disclosure themselves. Because if there was any benefit on either side there, I'm sure they would have done it a long time ago. They certainly could have, right?
Yeah, sure. And that's what I say. A lot of people tell me, oh, they're going to destroy us. They're here to take over. And maybe that's the case, but I'm wondering, why wait? They could have done it, 40 years ago. So why wait?
Yeah. I don't think they're waiting for anything. There's been a lot of destruction, that was done, like I said, a lot of manipulation and destruction that's occurred here in this world. But it would have been a lot worse if it wasn't for the intervention of the benevolent ones. They're not on board with this at all. So they're doing what they can, and my understanding is that they've done a lot. But they don't want the publicity because it could actually jeopardize some of their operations going forward.
So then the ETs, because these UFOs, I've seen them myself. These UFOs, if they didn't want to be seen, I have to believe that they wouldn't be seen. And sometimes it seems like they play games with people. And I'm wondering, is it their decision not to, want to be exposed, or who's making those decisions?
No, if you look at the latest pictures, Mr. Allen's getting almost on a nightly basis. He's been doing this for months now, and he only lives 7 blocks from the White House. Just go, check his website. He's been doing some changes to it. It's been running kind of slow because there's been literally millions of people going there to check it out. But like I said, he's got the cameras up on the roof every night, and there's things passing over his house that shouldn't be there almost on a nightly basis. And, it's not like look, they've been there forever, and there's nothing that the government can do or wants to do about it. I think they're in cahoots with the bad guys, and they don't want anything to do with the good guys. I think they've rejected their help many times, which is stupid, but, that's the decision. My understanding, that's the way it currently is. They don't want any help, because ultimately it's going to expose them. That's the other thing, too. If the good guys just come out and say, look, we'd like to help you, but your government's involved with these evil extraterrestrials, these demonic entities, oh man, can you imagine the kind of chaos, panic, and just problems that are going to ensue from something like that? It would be just horrendous.
Oh, I know. Unbelievable. And you remember a few years back, they sent this missile at the moon. They claimed to go in a crater and look for water and all this. You got to wonder, were they taking out a base or something up there? I wonder about that. Now, early on we were sending missiles up there to crash land into God knows what.
Obviously there's things up there and on Mars and probably on Venus. I think there's a lot going on Venus they're not telling about. The Russians have been a little more forthcoming about that, but our government has been lying to us and misrepresenting themselves for a long time, which is pathetic. At some point, it is going to come. It's a house of cards. It's going to come crashing down. I think it's already starting to happen, more, especially because of the internet. People are seeing through this facade. I think there's an apathy, though, at some level, because they don't know what to do about it yet. But I believe there will come a time, as there's a shift in consciousness that is occurring, whether we like it or not. As I was saying before, this soul reintegration was supposed to happen last year, but it was derailed temporarily. Some people did it, but not enough. So when we reach that tipping point, it's going to be game over for the bad guys. Because at that point, a majority of us, or enough of us, will no longer buy the bullshit, but it's simply, we won't be able to be lied to any longer. It won't have any effect. We will either ignore them or imprison them, or I don't know. Like I said, I don't really know exactly how it's going to go down, but it isn't going to end well for those who are in power at this point. In the Bible it says, the meek are going to inherit the earth. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Because clearly the leaders, the so-called leaders, are not doing their job as far as, especially when you look at what's going on with the way that they're treating us with the IRS.
Oh, I know.
The abuses at the IRS, as well as the NSA. Because let me tell you something, NSA is only one level of what the government can do. Cyber warfare is a reality, and they complain, on the media is complaining about China doing stuff. You think we're not doing stuff? You think our government is not conducting cyber warfare against other countries?
Oh, I know we are. Absolutely we are. Yeah,
we are.
I believe we're behind a lot of the problems that are going on in the Middle East right now. I think it's all being orchestrated. Yeah. And so
well, obviously it's orchestrated. We still don't know what happened in Benghazi for sure. We never will.
We've got a call coming in here, Robert. So I'm going to take it. We have 714 area code. You are on Late Night in the Midlands. First name, where you calling from?
Hey, Michael. It's Kimberly, Southern California.
Hi.
Hey, I just wanted to ask a little bit more about what he means by the soul integration. What exactly does that look like?
Well, Kimberly, I'm glad you're enjoying sunny Southern California. I'm originally from Los Angeles, but I'm living in New England now. And I kind of miss, I miss, I don't know if you've ever been out here to New England. It's absolutely beautiful, but I do miss Southern California, too.
I grew up in Ohio, and I live in Huntington Beach right now.
Oh, Huntington, yes. Love the waves there. It's fantastic. Great beach.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, it's a work of a man named Chris Thomas. And if you want to know more about that, you could just shoot me an email, and I'll send you some of his articles or links to interviews that I've done with him. My website is unicusmagazine.com, so just email me at editor@unicusmagazine.com, spelled UNICUS magazine.com. Anyway, what he's saying is that our souls, for most people here on this planet at this time, our souls are not fully integrated into our bodies. This is an agreement or a process that was supposed to happen a while back, but for whatever reasons, we, as a majority of us, have not done this process. And so he described to me, actually today in a recent interview, he said that, he reminded me again through the audience that we need to let go of all our negative emotions and attachments, and that's easier said than done. I realize that, but he actually gave an example of, let's say, if there's somebody that you're still harboring resentments or negative emotions towards, to write it down, and then burn it. I mean, it sounds too simple, but I'm telling you, this is just one step in a long series of things that we can do in the right direction. And it's important because a lot of us don't realize that the people around us, so quite a few people on this planet, are literally possessed. Just their spirit has been hijacked. The body has literally been hijacked, and that's another reason why the soul doesn't reside fully in that body of a person, whoever that we may be talking about, okay, an individual. Let's just say, well, I don't know, maybe a president. It happens all the time in Washington, D.C. In fact, the whole city is set up like that, and I describe exactly how that works in my second book, Covert Encounters in Washington, D.C. The conclusion is very lengthy because of all the information that I've gathered about that place, it's far different than what we think we know or what we're taught or told about the nation's capital. It's actually it's a stronghold for satanic forces. Okay, and I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to say that it isn't a struggle between Christ and the devil. It's a lot more complicated than that. It's far more complex. But here's the other thing too. I was born in America, and I've traveled around the world, been to over 50 countries, and I do still feel like this is not only my home, but the greatest nation in modern history in many ways. But it is also the home of some of the most evil people or souls that have ever walked the face of this planet. So it's a very odd dichotomy here, because here's the utter hypocrisy, right? We have this president get up and talk about the plight of the African American. Okay, what about the Native American? I guess we just forgot all about them, right? All the genocide that was committed for what?
Yeah.
So we could build highways? I mean, come on. This is asinine. Every group that has come to this country has suffered. But those who suffered the worst, and were actually the first to suffer the worst, were and still are the Native American people. So I just, when I hear him lecture us, it just makes me, on some level, makes me nauseous.
Yeah, I totally agree. We actually have been working with the Navajo and the Hopi in Arizona the last couple of years, and did some peace ceremonies with them. And in December 2012, they actually came together in ceremony and forgave each other.
I heard about that. Yes, I heard.
Are working together.
Yes,
you heard about it? Wow.
I did. I did. I heard about it. I'm in touch with Native Americans out here, what's left of their culture out here in New England, and I'm good friends with some of the family members of the Pokanoket, and they were the ones that befriended the Pilgrims and saved them from starvation that first winter. Of course, then the Puritans showed up and really wrecked that relationship. even prior to that, even before the Pilgrims showed up, the Jesuits were here, poisoning them with the natives with smallpox through blankets. But anyway, yeah, I heard that the Navajo and Hopi had come together at a time when I think some crystal skulls were being brought into out there for ceremony as well.
I actually have 3 skulls myself. Actually,
Oh, you got some.
Yeah, I have one crystal.
You did.
Two. Yeah, I actually I bought them the first year, but it was something that was. They kind of look at that like a little scary. They're kind of scared of it, so we kind of kept them to ourselves. But yeah, and you mentioned the skinwalkers. I found out about skinwalkers when I was out there a few years ago.
Oh yeah, that's
no
no joke.
Familiar with them until they told me about it, and I'm like, I'm not sleeping out in a tent by myself out on that land with those guys walking around, interdimensional beings. So yeah, I appreciate everything you say. I mean.
Do you happen? Did anybody mention? Can you tell me what's going on there at Big Mountain? Are they still mining the uranium there?
Are you talking about on the reservation?
Yeah, on the Navajo reservation. I believe it was called Big Mountain, where they were just digging up all the uranium there.
Might be. Is it Black Falls? You might be referring to in that area. They I don't know if they're still doing it, but the cancer just runs rampant out there because of. It's just so polluted. Everything's polluted. Their water is horrible. It's not even drinkable. And so the whole reason they went out there is to raise awareness once they raised the Bennett Freeze and actually try to bring them out of poverty. We did get 28 homes got built. And when I say us, it was just a group of us that worked with Navajo Nation and got some money shook up and got it to the community. So it's a slow kind of grassroots type thing we're doing. We've been out there 3 years, and then I'll be our 4th year out there on Earth Day this coming year, 2014. So maybe we can have you come out and meet with us and watch the work that we're doing.
That'd be fantastic. Yes, you're right. It is, absolutely. That's what the Hopis are all about. And the Navajo have had their issues, obviously, with especially with the Ute. It's the same thing out here. There has been conflict between tribes, but nothing like when the Europeans showed up. But you're right. Black Mesa is also part of the Big Mountain area, and there was forced relocation there even after the treaties because they found uranium and they started strip mining it. And it's horrible. The pollution and the suffering there is just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's when I first heard about it, I can't tell you how many times I cried about it. I was like, I can't believe that we've done this to our own people, and in the name of what? Big companies coming out to rape their land and run them off of it, and basically killing them, and they stay on the land because they know the land's sacred, and so they stay on the land regardless of, and continue to do their ceremony. But we've done beautiful work there. And now that they're working the medicine men are working next to each other. Ruben from the Water Clan was also out here with Dr. Emoto blessing the water down in San Onofre. That happened on 7/11. They all came together and did it like a 3-hour water ceremony. It was I wasn't present there, but my friends of ours were all there. Pretty good stuff. I don't want to hijack your show here, but there's so many interesting things to talk about. And
absolutely.
I'll let you guys continue with the show.
All right.
Well, I'll email you as well. Okay?
Thank you. Thanks. Sounds good. Appreciate it.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Kimberly. And, she brings up a great point. I mean, just another case of, in a severe way, people, are welcoming. They teach you how to grow food, how to survive. And what do? You stab them in the back and throw them on reservations. And, it's just, imagine how wonderful it'd be if the Native Americans were still running things here. I mean, nature would probably still be fantastic. I mean, they were so in touch with nature, Mother Nature and the earth. And these demonic entities that run things now, I mean, they have no idea what a plant is. They want to create everything in a lab. including babies. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty sad. Yeah, well, look, part of it was that they had to destroy, they being the non-indigenous people, which is kind of a weird thing when you think about it, right? Mm-hmm. How can you be non-indigenous if you're from Earth, right? Or maybe they're not. I don't think they are, honestly. But anyway, they had to destroy all the tribal cultures because they were still connected to not only the planet, but the cosmos and the star people. So the negatives, when they came in here and started taking over, that was one of the things that was on their list, part of their agenda, and they've done it. I mean, it's horrendous when I see, especially where I'm living here, the way that they made it literally illegal for the native people to speak their own language or own property. In this particular case where I'm here, the only way they survived actually was becoming slaves.
Yeah.
This was the work of Roger Williams. He told them that there are these Puritans want to kill you, but if you were someone's property, then there would be a severe penalty if they kill you, because that means they are literally destroying someone else's property. So that was how he saved quite a few of them. But it's also how there was a dilution, a mixing of blood. The native people, when they became slaves, they started mingling their blood with slaves that were brought here from Africa brutally, put onto the plantations here in New England and other places. But this was part of the history of New England. And so you have Native Americans that have African blood, European blood, as well as indigenous blood. But you got to understand, the indigenous people here were interacting with star people for a long time before the Europeans showed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just a crazy mess, honestly. And I do think it has been there's a certain level of warfare that's gone on. I don't mean just between Europeans and stuff. I'm talking about here on this planet. There's been it's one of the reasons things are so screwed up is because the first casualty of war is always the truth. So they had to divorce us from the truth. What?
I like that saying. The first casualty of war is the truth. It's so true.
Because it's accurate.
Yeah, it's true.
It's unfortunate, but it's accurate, and it's part of the. It's just a way of, like I said, things need to be put into context, and it may sound odd when a person first hears this kind of conversation. It probably sounds a little bit off to some people, but on some level, if they actually think about it, if they allow themselves to really contemplate it, the truth has a way of infecting a person or affecting them in their consciousness, in their soul. You know, if you resonate with something that is true, you can't unlearn something like that. You know what I mean? It definitely it changes you. So as I say, it's one of the reasons I decided to go 5 nights a week, even though it's a huge commitment. I don't think we have much more time left with this current system, and I really want to see it. I want to see it go away as quickly as possible.
I agree,
because I am concerned about the future of not just for my son, but for all the children, all the people. Because here's the way I see it, Michael: is that we're all seeds of light. We're all sparks from the original source, a greater mature soul, whatever you want to call it. And it's a very organic process that it's eternal. And we're part of that until such time that we disconnect. We choose to disconnect. And I know we've been had a lot of help doing that. Most of us were manipulated into false beliefs. So hearing the truth is shocking, I think, to some people, especially even now. But I don't think you and I could have had this conversation 20 years ago. I mean, it wouldn't be as well received as it is now.
You're right.
And I mean, because I was doing it. I was doing this through the magazine. Unicus magazine was first published in 1991 by my wife. That's how I met her. And we started working together full time and starting to try to get a positive message out there. But, prior to that, things were different. I mean, I as a young man in my 20s during the 1980s, I found that people are not very receptive. Obviously, I wasn't as articulate back then. I wasn't as knowledgeable about these things, but I was just as interested back then as I am now. Okay, and so I do have some sense of how things have progressed in the past 20, 30 years regarding this information. I don't categorize it as New Age or metaphysical. I'm saying that the truth is quite different from all the lies that we've been force-fed in the Matrix here. This Matrix is a lie. We've been living a lie. And I know that's very uncomfortable for some people. They're like, what are you talking about? Who are you to tell me I'm living a lie? Well, I'm like you. I'm a seed of light. Okay, you may have forgotten, but I haven't. I became awake and aware to that fact, and it was a very startling experience. But I mean, that's
right.
That's just my path.
My colleague on Wednesday nights, he says that the human race will not survive the change, but the human family will go on forever. And I like that. Yeah, I like that idea.
Well, we don't, Mike. We don't know what the changes exactly are going to look like, but I think more and more people are starting to recognize that we need to take responsibility for whatever future we want to create. That we are creators. That we are gods in a state of becoming, in the sense that we are learning how to use our consciousness to effectively create, not just to change things, but literally create things, because that's the way I understand everything really is. Okay, they say energy and matter are the same thing, but truthfully, where is it all coming from? There has to be a source, and in my worldview, it's consciousness, but it's not random consciousness. It's very mindful, purposeful. It's intelligent living energy. Yeah. What my shaman friend out here told me is that he says we all live within the mind of God. This is a construct. Okay, it's a concept that was. In other words, everything is conceived. In order to create anything, you have to conceive it in your mind first. Like a car, right?
Yeah.
You think, oh, well, a car. Well, no, it starts as a thought. If you conceive it in your mind, and you put it on a piece of paper, then you hand that to somebody else, and they make a model, and eventually, it becomes manifest. It's true for everything. I mean, there's a certain level of energy, material involved in this process, but ultimately, primarily, fundamentally, it is consciousness. So it's called digital physics, is what they're calling it now. And it seems new, but it's not. It's a process. No matter what you call it, it's always going to be the same process. And it is that consciousness is primary, and that at a slightly lower vibration, consciousness is something we call energy, and a slightly lower vibration than that, it would be matter. It's various densities of matter. Okay, so how does one propagate the consciousness? Well, and here's where it gets really interesting, is that they tell us that, what you see in your mind's eye is just your imagination, and that is not true at all. It's another of the big lies. I mean, in fact, everything that we see, we think is external. No, it's actually, we're seeing it not on our eyes, but inside our head, inside the hollow space inside our head. Okay, the energy is just being transferred in there, and so we literally create a holographic representation internally. Okay, and that's not physical, but it's it's virtual reality, okay? Everything that we're seeing here is, like I said, it's a concept. It's a virtual reality. There's rules to this particular reality. But sometimes the rules can be broken, but you have to know what the rules are. You can bend the rules, certainly. You have to know what they are. And what are our capabilities? Well, like I said, the powers that be don't want us to understand these things because it would make it so much harder for them to control us and manipulate us.
That's right.
That's right. So again, these are pretty simple things, what I'm saying, but it needs to be said, I feel, more than once so that more and more people get the message, or at least start to contemplate this message that I'm giving about who we are, where we are, why we're here, and truly consciousness. The big thing about consciousness is it exists to evolve, and it does that through experiences. So the choices we make, the experiences we have, are extremely important. It's not about how much stuff you have or the numbers in the phony money. You know, that is not the measure of a man.
That's
okay,
right.
It is truly your consciousness and your the soul. The soul is really truly pure consciousness. It's an intelligent living energy / consciousness that retains all the memory that it's ever all the experiences it's ever had, whether physical or not. Because I said, you know, here's the other thing. You know, when you're a soul, when you're not a physical being, you're non-physical. You can interact with other non-physical beings, and it seems perfectly normal, just like we're doing here now. It's just like, again, there's various levels of these virtual realities. And even though they're virtual, that doesn't mean they're non-existent. Like I said, just think about it. They call it imagination for a reason. It's where you image things. The mind's eye is incredibly important. You know, like I said, you have to conceive these things before they become manifest. And this is just very rudimentary. I mean, obviously, you know, the higher or the more advanced, as you go up into the higher realms of consciousness, you can manifest all kinds of stuff instantly. So you have to be very aware of controlling your thoughts, right? You don't want to manifest monsters.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, and
right?
You make a great point. If, you know, everything's a thought before it becomes any kind of reality. And another good point that my colleague makes is he says, well, you better hope that the source never stops thinking about you.
Yeah. Well, at some point we become, I believe, in our progress, if we get to a certain level of progress, we are truly become independent in our ability to create. And this is where universes come from. As far as I know, I think that the space is infinite. Universes are finite in the sense that once a soul blooms, it can create an entire universe. Now, I don't think they're all the same size, just like galaxies are not all the same size. But size is irrelevant. It's the act of creation. Okay? And the other thing I find fascinating is that we are all responsible for our creation, especially when you become a parent, right?
Yeah.
But you don't own that child. You're responsible for their well-being, you know, as much as to a certain extent. But you're supposed to nurture them, but you're not there to control them. And that's the other beauty of the process. Instead of just making duplicates of itself and getting larger, it makes independent, like seeds off a tree, you know. It just keeps dropping more seeds, and those seeds mature, and then at some point they create more seeds, and so on and so on and so on. But each one is relatively independent, and yet they're all related. It's beautiful, okay? I mean, somehow we have come to this crazy misunderstanding that nature is somehow out there.
Right.
And it's not. We're part of nature too, but it's not. You know, again, it's a misperception is that nature is mindless. The native, that's the other thing. Native tribal people, they already knew this. They still know it. Those of them that are still in touch with their origins, they know that everything has a consciousness, or a spirit, if you want to call it that.
Right. And nature has a way of taking care of problems. We keep tampering and poisoning her. The immune system's going to kick in, and we're going to be on for one hell of a ride. And we're already there, really, with the weather modification and other things that they've tampered with, and, of course, natural cycles as well.
Right. But I understand all that. But I also want people to recognize that we are not supposed to just bail out because things look bad. I think the bad guys have really done a number on, especially within the so-called New Age community, with trying to make people feel like everything is lost here. If you get a chance to jump ship, just do it. In other words, the grass is always greener, right, on the other side of the fence. So just hop the fence. But in Texas, they have a saying, the grass is always greener over the septic tank. So you might not want to go over there. And I'm just saying that my understanding is that once we start to fully integrate or reintegrate our souls into our bodies, that we will not only effectively heal ourselves, but we will heal the planet. Because the planet is aware, it's conscious also, and it wants to work with us. It wants to work with us. I mean, think about it. Look at all the diversity on this planet. It's amazing. And so there's something very special about this planet's ability to manifest life forms. Or, think about it. Again, various forms of consciousness that are embodying themselves here. Now, if we were to recognize them as consciousnesses that we are co-created with, and showing them respect, then they will show us respect. It's not even just about pollution, okay?
Right.
It's or corruption. It's about a relationship. It's either functional or not. And at this point, it has been highly dysfunctional, but that doesn't mean we can't change it. We can change it, and we should change it.
Yeah, it's all vibration. I mean, even a plant, if you have a house plant, and
yep.
Studies have been done. If you talk to this plant, it's healthier. It grows well. So even they pick up that vibration, that spiritual frequency, I guess. But it does something.
Mm-hmm.
And Robert, I want to take a real quick break here, and I want to come back and wars in the stars. There's people with they've got these night vision glasses or what have you that they look through, and I've have so many videos, not only on YouTube, but that have been getting sent to me now, where some of it could be explained away, maybe a bat or this or that, but a lot of it. No, a lot of it can't. A lot of it's out there. I mean, obviously craft. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Well, here's the thing. This battle's been going on for a long time. My understanding that whenever the negatives showed up here and destroyed this world from the paradise that it once was, that the good guys who were living here swore that they would return and liberate the planet. Okay, they're not here to babysit us, but they definitely are concerned about this world, the future of this particular planet, because the reason it's so special is because it was terraformed a long time ago by a group that we could just loosely call the Builders. And they are, we're doing God's work in the sense that this is a soul garden. And there's a lot, but however, there's a lot of weeds here. So this is where the conflict has been raging for some time, and I'm not sure exactly when it's going to come to an end, but I've seen those videos too. It's really impossible for us to tell who's the good guys in all of this, but I think it's pretty obvious. You can always tell them by their actions. I saw a really interesting word pop up here as I was sitting on the break. Have you ever heard this one? Wargasm?
No, actually I haven't. I don't think I have.
Yeah, me neither.
Interesting.
Wargasm, and it makes a lot of sense because, as I've been telling people since 2011, these entities are parasitic, and so they feed off of negative energies, especially trauma. That's why I call the president O-Trauma, because he is the leader of a traumatized nation, or he's allegedly the leader of the free world, or the misleader of the free world, and he's a trauma victim. Obviously, he's under control and of others, because that's one of the things. When you traumatize somebody, not only do you feed off of, if you're a parasitic entity, not only can you feed off of the energy, but if you weaken that person's spirit enough, you can actually hijack their vehicle, the body. And that's what possession is all about. That's why channeling is such a bad idea, ultimately. It opens you up to a certain level of possession, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Okay. And the next thing on the list here is Sasquatch, Bigfoot, call them what you will, but you had talked about portals earlier. And the question came up as to whether these creatures or beings or whatever they are, if they could be possibly using these portals.
Absolutely. That seems to be part of it. And definitely they're seen all over the planet, too. They don't need forests. So how do they hide out in the desert?
That's a good
seriously.
question.
Okay, so this is what I was told by my shaman friend here. He says that's how come we never find them. But they're here because, like I said, people have been seeing them for pretty much forever and all over the planet. In all kinds of environments, up in the snow, out in the desert, in the woods, in the swamps. I mean, just everywhere except downtown, you know. And I think that's because they really don't like us. Generally speaking, the reason that they come across as being scary whenever somebody encounters them is because they don't want to get near us. They don't want us getting near them. So they scare the living daylights out of people, quite often throwing rocks or, you know, making weird noises or what have you. Because they just don't want to interact with us typically.
And I don't blame them. And, you know, because the first thing they'd want to do is run all kinds of tests on them, kind of like an alien abduction.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, of course. Let's dissect them, right? Yeah. So we can learn what they're actually all about.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, for a long time now, I've kind of made that link to the UFO phenomena as maybe having some kind of connection with these Bigfoots because, you know, I've never seen one myself, but, you know, people, stories, videos, these things, they're there. They go into the woods and they're gone. They just disappear. So,
well, yeah, the portals, there's all kinds of stuff coming through the portals, and that's what I was saying about a skinwalker. The Navajo call them that, but yeah, they seem to have superhuman power, but there clearly are all kinds of creatures that come through the portal. I mean, even the Hopi Indians talk about how they came here. They came here allegedly from the Pleiades, that they built a bamboo ladder and they crawled up into a hole in the sky that led them to a hole in the ground. It opened up to a hole in the ground here on this world. That's how they got here, through some sort of portal.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it makes sense. You know, it's one of those beam me up, Harry. You know, and they're gone. So
yeah, something like that. It's something like that. But you know, it's like I said. I think we're on the verge of all kinds of things being revealed right now, for whatever reason. I think there's multiple reasons here.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, moving on to shadow people. That was another question that came up.
Yeah.
What do you make of these shadow people? I used to think it was just people were. Yeah, I never think people are crazy because those are the ones you want to listen to. But I've always thought it was kind of, I don't know, crazy shadow people. But I've actually had my own experiences with that stuff. I mean, they're there. You see them, and then they're gone. What's going on there?
Well, yeah, I think it's multiple things. Some of these are the parasitic entities that the Gnostics called archons. There was one type of them. Castaneda talked about them. He called them the flyers. I said the Gnostics, one level of what the Gnostics called archons was an amoeba-looking entity, and it's not human. It isn't human, and I believe it can shapeshift. So that's one thing. I think at times we're seeing people from other dimensions, these non-physical entities that kind of just pass through. Or it could be sometimes it's literally a disincarnate soul of a deceased person that is trying to communicate with us.
You know, I'll say this recently, recently, I'd say about the last 3-4 months. I've been seeing a lot more stuff, and you know, like I'll be sitting there and I see, like I thought Autumn was standing against the wall here looking at me the other day, and I see her out of the corner of my eye. I know that there's somebody standing there, and I turn to look, and it's like warp speed, just fades away. And I'm thinking, am I losing my mind, or was somebody just standing there? But now she tells me that she's actually seen it too. I've laid in bed and I've seen somebody standing there, and then I get up and turn the light on and they disappear. And I know this stuff sounds crazy, but you know, either I'm looking at the computer screen way too long, or you know, something's visiting me.
Yeah, well, I think it's a lot of us. A lot of us are experiencing these things, and up until recently, there was really no place to talk about it without being ridiculed. So that's one of the good things about the internet. Of course, there's a lot of nonsense going on too in the internet, and so you got to be mindful of that. But
yeah, there's a ton of it going on. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. You know, I get into that some nights. There's sometimes I run across stuff that, you know, you can prove is just disinformation, and it really, you know, it fires me up sometimes. Like, you know, we've got so many distractions now, and then you got people out there who intentionally, whether it be they're hired to do it or they just want to try to make a name of themselves or whatever it might be, and they make so much stuff up. It just drives me nuts sometimes. Last question we got here from the chat at this point. Michael, can you ask if he has any knowledge of portals at the poles that leads to land or ocean, animals inside the planet? That's the question.
Well, I wouldn't call them portals. Allegedly, there's openings that go into, I don't think the whole interior of the planet's hollow. I mean, some people claim it is. I don't really see it like that. I mean, who knows? I can't go there. At least I don't know how you could possibly do that. Allegedly, there's been people that have done it, but I mean, there's no way to verify whether or not that's true. I do think that there are tunnel systems that run around the world that are really ancient, and there probably are really massive areas underground. Again, this is the thing. We don't know what's below the surface, but I'll tell you what is freaking me out is how the amount of sinkholes that are showing up these days around the planet.
God, yes, I know. And you know, okay, we've heard of little sinkholes in people's backyards through the years, but this has gotten ridiculous.
It really has. And I mean, there's all kinds of theories. I mean, fracking, maybe. I don't think so. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. What is so stunning too, when you look at the pictures, is the precision of these holes. The ones that are, I saw one yesterday. It just looked like a cookie cutter. It's huge, really deep too. I mean, it just swallows up whole buildings and cars, and it's just wild.
Yeah, you know, and they're popping up all over the world, but there's quite a few that have popped up in Florida. I know Louisiana, in the Corn Bayou there, they've got quite a monster brewing there. Yeah, that's just a drop in the bucket. And, you know, I got to wonder if, you know, if maybe something's seeping through the crust, you know, and if we're not getting, our crust isn't shifting, or or what's going on? Some people put it to Planet X. Where do you stand with that? I mean, do you think that it's?
I don't put a lot of credence in it, especially because there's so much fear mongering going on around that. I really, and besides that, I haven't seen the proof. I haven't actually seen the evidence. I can tell you one thing that is real, though, is that our solar system has entered into a very large cloud. Let's call it a nebula. And that there's a lot of energy in this cloud. This nebulous cloud of charged particles is something that NASA calls the fluff. And if you want to read about it, it's on my website at unicusmagazine.com. Just click on articles. And it's massive changes underway in the solar system. I believe that's what I called it. Hold on, I'm looking here. Huge changes underway in our solar system. And what it is there's a PDF that was leaked by a Boeing employee, an insider. And this is the real reason that we're having climate change. And it's happening all across the solar system.
It is.
Because the solar system is a bubble of energy called the heliosphere. And it has literally, we are now completely immersed in this giant cloud of energy. Some people claim to call it, photon belt or photon zone or whatever. But again, that was a lot of channel stuff, Palladium material, whatever. But science is admitting now, essentially it's based on the Voyager probes 1 and 2 that were sent out. Once they got outside or near the edge of the heliosphere, they were supposed to speed up, and actually they slowed down. So they were doing a lot of measurements, and that's how they finally noticed that there was this enormous cloud of charged particles that we are entering, or have at this point we're in it. There's no way to stop it. We have to pass through it, and they're saying it could take up to 200 years for us to pass through it. So if you think back to what I said about consciousness, energy, and matter, there's some higher level of energy that is affecting us, affecting our consciousness at this stage. And it's not only affecting our consciousness, it's affecting our environment dramatically. So, yes, of course, there's going to continue to be Earth changes, but ultimately the system that we live in, this matrix that was designed to enslave us, it has to fall in order for us to move forward. In other words, again, we're on an interrupted journey as seeds of light here in the soul garden. So it's just because there's a lot of weeds that need to be removed. So
yeah, and this energy cloud makes a lot of sense to me because great points have come up as, okay, then what's affecting the other planets in our solar system? And that makes a lot of sense. And now I would wonder, being that we're going through this big energy cloud, could there be actual planets that are forming within that cloud that are affecting our outer planets as well? I mean, could that be because look, we've had bombardments here on the Earth with comets. We've got all kinds of, the weather is just absolutely nuts, the way the weather patterns have been. We've been spared so far with the whole hurricane thing, but fasten your seatbelt because I really believe it's going to pick up in the blink of an eye.
Well, I hope not. And, the thing is, look, if you know anything about the Hopis, that they can make it rain out in the desert, so allegedly they know how to work with their environment. And I think, again, this is something we're going to have to pay attention to it and ultimately learn this skill or process. In other words, a much more dynamic relationship with our environment based on consciousness. Our consciousness is key. It's not about controlling things. It's about coordinating our consciousness with that of the planet and the cosmos, and working in concert with it instead of trying to control it. I mean, these are false concepts, by the way. This nonsense that we can somehow control nature, it's idiotic.
Yeah, it is.
It's an alien concept that was introduced here fairly recently, or I should say relatively recently. That's not how things were originally designed to work here on this world or within this universe.
What about Comet Ison? That's another question that came up, and a very interesting one at that. What's your take on that whole thing?
I've heard of it, but I don't know. I mean, I really haven't studied it, so I can't answer that question. I don't know exactly what. Are you asking? Is it going to destroy the Earth or what?
Well, no, I'm sure that some people out there are asking that question. I'm not. But I'm just wondering what you think. Some think it's a psyop. Others say that it's a cover-up and that Planet X is actually coming, and of course we've already covered that. But yeah. I'm just wondering what's your take on it. Me, right now, it's a comet. I don't know what else to say. Was it going to bring stuff? It's huge. I've seen it, and it is huge. So you got to wonder what it might pull in that tail that it has, or whatever. And I imagine we're going to see a lot more rocks hitting the Earth through time here. Especially we're passing through the energy cloud, like you say. My good friend Peter Kling calls it the photon belt. But nevertheless, we are going through it. You're absolutely right about that. And I guess we'll find out what's in it.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be concerned about it because ultimately, most of the stuff, we can't really control it. It's whatever happens. All we can do is be more mindful of our thoughts and especially our emotions. As I've said for a while now, that it's really important not to let ourselves go into a negative emotional state, because then it makes us more vulnerable to manipulation. And literally, like I said, these entities feed off of that, and or literally can take over our bodies. And obviously, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We're getting down near the end here, and I want to give you a chance to get to anything that you'd like, any information you want to get out there. And one other thing that maybe you could check for me, and maybe send me an email on it. I'm sure you've got a lot of sources as well. I keep getting told that the moon is doing different things. Some are saying it flipped, and I've gone out, I've looked at the moon in my sky here, and I've compared it to pictures from a long time ago. And to me, maybe I'm missing something, but to me it looks like it's, normal. I don't know, but maybe that's something. Do you know anything about that? Is the moon changing?
No, I mean, it is moving away slowly, but I mean in a very minute amount as far as what they've admitted to. We're drifting a little bit apart. I'm not sure that's such a bad thing, but I think what we really have to be concerned about is the sun more than anything else, because that's the one that can really change things more dramatically. I mean, obviously, if the moon did move away, that would be that would be a big problem. But as far as we know, the sun is going through, in the next few months, it's going to be going through a magnetic flip, and that will definitely have an effect on the consciousness of all life here on this world. It happens, it happens periodically, and it's part of a process. But again, I think it's more important to be prepared, but not just about like stockpiling stuff. It's about preparing yourself mentally, spiritually, for these changes that are occurring, and remaining connected to the cosmos, the consciousness of the creation.
That's right. Exactly. All right.
So, anyway, people can reach me through my website, unicusmagazine.com. Got a lot of neat stuff there for people. I'm updating it on a regular basis, so that's my main thing. I mean, I spend a lot of time working on that, and I always love to hear from you, whoever is out there. Comments, questions, criticisms. I'll answer any of that stuff. And Michael, I do appreciate what you're doing, and I thank you very much for having me back on your show.
Well, thank you, Robert. I appreciate what you do as well. And I want to get your links up. I've got a new website.
It was, I'm going to say early 90s. Yeah. I'm going to say very, or maybe, let's see, wait a minute, no, late 90s, sorry. Because he's 18 now. So I started taking care of him when he was 3. My wife wanted to go back to work full time, and we didn't feel really comfortable about leaving him at with a daycare or a sitter full time. So I worked part time, and then I stayed home and I took care of him, and it was really neat actually. But I got to tell you, it's a lot of work too. I mean, people I think do not respect, or they totally underestimate the mother's role at staying home, not just taking care of the kid, but also running a household. It can get it's a lot of responsibility actually. It's not a picnic.
Yeah, let's just say that going back to work is like a night out with the boys after you've done that.
Man. Yeah, after our son was first born, and I was getting little or no sleep at the house, and everything was kind of just crazy at the house. Yeah, actually going to work did seem like a vacation on some level, but I think what part of it too is I wasn't very close with my dad, so I think when the opportunity presented itself, I thought, okay, yeah, why not spend more time, especially because I also knew that, and believe me, I experienced this with my son, that when he became a teenager, that he was going to start rebelling, and whatever crises he was going to have, it would be really tough to deal with it if I hadn't established a solid relationship early on. In other words, bonding with your kids when they're young is, I think, probably the best antidote for when they become angry, confused teenagers, zombies, where they stay up all night.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And I've always had an open, honest relationship with my kids, and I'm
Good.
glad, because I'll tell you, they could get, once they get older, they know it all. You can't tell them anything, and you have to let them make some mistakes. I mean, they've got to learn.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
And of course, they'll always tell you, I'm an adult now. You can't tell me what to do. I've heard that. It's like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But Robert, now that we've spoke about our children and all that stuff, now we got to think about maybe their future and look at everything that's going on, not just in this country, but around the world, especially around the world right now. What do you see coming? I mean, the United States is talking about nailing Syria now, and I keep saying, as we had last time and had to reschedule. I think this has happened a couple times now. I do apologize.
Don't worry about it. It's fine.
So, Robert, I read off the bio, but for any new listeners, maybe you want to give a little scoop, a little more scoop on your background, and tell me what's new with you since the last time we spoke.
Besides troubleshooting technical difficulties here in the studio, I've been hosting my radio show 5 nights a week, and it's keeping me busy. I'm also writing a third book now. It's called Archons and Angels, sort of like the good, the bad, the ugly of cosmic conspiracies and things of that nature. I am still working as a part-time as a correspondent for America's Radio News Network, and in fact I filed a report today, which was, it's national radio out of Washington D.C. I still can't quite believe they're letting me do this, but apparently they're thrilled to have me talking about this stuff, which it doesn't quite seem real to me, but it's, hey, I've got the tapes to prove it. So anyway, that's what I've been doing.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm looking forward to the new book. You really do a good job on your books. I mean, you put a lot of information, and you can tell that you spend a lot of time putting this together.
Yeah, it does. It takes a tremendous amount of focus and time to get the information, so that it flows. It's just like, I mean, you never see that. When you're reading a book, you have no idea how long it took somebody to actually do that. Sort of like watching a movie, you know?
Right. And, until I started doing this show almost 6 years ago now, I didn't realize how much work actually went into a book till I started having different guests on. And then I've been in the process of writing my own about some experiences that I've had. And I'll tell you, it is time consuming and it's not as easy as some people may think.
No, absolutely not. In fact, it's writing is actually it's the most important thing about it is rewriting, going back again and again over the same material until your head feels like it's going to just explode. And one of the weird parts I find is the brain is especially when it comes to editing material, is that your brain will either add or omit things that may or may not be there. It's just really strange. So that kind of is a challenge mentally, and that's why a lot of times it's good to have more than one person looking at your work before you publish it, or even these days, it's with publishing on demand, it's really quite different.
But we're going to try again here. But first, let me tell you a little bit about him, because I'm convinced that he's just on-time, prompt kind of guy, and I told him 9:30. So we'll give him another minute or two here. But Robert M. Stanley, as I said, has been a guest on this show several times in the past. Formerly a corporate journalist for Honda Research and Development in Torrance, California. Robert Stanley is currently the author of Close Encounters on Capitol Hill and Covert Encounters in Washington, D.C. And he is the host of Unicus Radio Hour, and he has served as a correspondent for America's Morning News and America's Radio News Network. In 2001, he became the webmaster of unicusmagazine.com, and in 2013, he became the owner-operator of the Unicus Radio Network. Mr. Stanley has traveled to more than 50 countries and has read hundreds of books and thousands of articles during his lifelong pursuit of modern and ancient mysteries. Over the past 30 years, Robert's quest for unique ideas and information has led him to research and write about many controversial topics. His ongoing investigations have been featured on television, radio, and in print. He is a native of Los Angeles, California. He grew up in Malibu, and in 2008 moved to southern New England, where he now lives with his wife, son, and his dog. And I think that's about all you need to know. So why don't we get him on, and, well, let's try. I try not to do it live like this, but sometimes I have no choice. So we'll see what happens. We're ringing, folks.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Robert. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I am doing fine, thank you. I just read off your bio. Tried to pull you in on the break, but we had to do it live.
Sorry.
So, no, that's quite all right. It happens. It's live radio. What are you going to do? But, hey, thank you so much for coming on tonight. And I do want to apologize for the issue. And if that happens, I see World War III coming, and that's a scary thing.
Of course it is. So, yeah, I mean, somebody today was, gosh, I've done so much today. It's kind of weird. This is my third show today. So somebody along, triple header. Somebody told me that the president said we weren't going to go in, that they were going to let the UN handle it. We'll see. Honestly, I don't know. I don't trust any of the politicians, and what I really don't like is the way that they lecture us while they're lying to us about things. I can't say for sure what's going to happen, but I did interview somebody today I thought was fascinating. In England, he claims to be a psychic surgeon that can read the Akashic records, and he was talking about these different extraterrestrial races and how they've influenced us, both good and ill, which fits perfectly in with what I've been writing about in this. And I only write nonfiction. In fact, 99% of what I read is nonfiction because the truth is stranger than fiction. You know, honestly, yeah. It just is. Especially the path that I'm treading on. The truth is just so far beyond anything that Hollywood could come up with. It's not even funny. But actually, one of the things that I was noticing is these portals. I sort of fell into that as well. That the wormholes actually play a very large role, whatever you call them, portals, wormholes, stargates. Certainly that's what's been going on in Washington, D.C. for a long time, that they don't have to have a base there. They can literally just pop in and out of these portals whenever they feel like it. And based on what my journalism partner in Washington, D.C. is Wilbur Allen. And he's actually helped with the reason I got started investigating this 8 years ago. But he lives 7 blocks from the White House. And almost every night, if it's not raining, he's putting out his top-of-the-line Nikon equipment on top of the roof where he lives and taking, it's automated, so it's taking one shot every 2 seconds. And he's getting UFOs on a regular basis. I mean, like every night for months now. He's been doing this, and I think it proves conclusively that they're UFOs, whatever you want to call them, starships, interdimensional craft. They're severely interested in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I had Wilbur Allen on. Might have been a couple months ago now, and he's a fascinating guy. Really enjoyed talking with him. Yeah, and he had great things to say about you as well. So, and I was going to ask you about this UFO influence, this alien influence.
Yeah, it's both good and bad. Okay, some of them would be. It's pretty simple, and I've done this where you get a manuscript out there, and then you read through it as a copy in your hands, as opposed to on a computer screen where you're just sitting there very casually, having a cup of coffee, looking out the window, whatever, reading a book, your book. And then finding a typo or a word or something, and you go, wait a minute, how did I miss that? I looked at that thing like 10 times before I published it. So anyway, you mark up the book with your red ink, go back in there, make the changes, and then upload the file. I happen to be using CreateSpace, which is a division of Amazon, and I like them very much. I highly recommend them to independent authors because they actually are also your distribution channel, and that can go internationally and certainly nationally, depending on how many levels you want them to distribute your work. And it's amazing to me how these days everything has changed. We can broadcast shows. You can do desktop publishing. I mean, pretty much anything you can think of, you can do in a computer now.
Oh, I know. It is absolutely amazing. I mean, you think about once the internet started blossoming, all the different radio shows that have come about and all the different works, period, that have come about. I mean, you could do everything. I mean, people don't need photomats no more. They don't. I mean, it's just all right there. Everything you want. As a matter of fact, I mean, you could get, really, if you want, any channel that's out there. You can get on the internet. Yeah. These days it is, and so anyway, that's kind of what I've been working on. And my son's actually going to college next week, which is a big deal around his house. I was telling my wife today, it's like I remember it wasn't that long ago. Our son was having separation anxiety going to preschool. Now, the parents are having a separation anxiety as he's entering college, leaving the house. And unless somebody is a parent or they've gone through it yet, I know when my daughter got to that age and decided she was going to college and moving away, it was I mean, you're proud of them. you're glad that they're doing the right thing, but at the same time, there's a part of you inside that just folds. It's like, oh my God, my baby's leaving. It's like, wow.
I felt it as soon as he graduated. I was already sensing it, and it made me sad. You know, I'm one of those stay-at-home dads at a time when it was really not very popular. It is now, but let's see, what year was that? Well, anyway,